What's up, my Yugi Bros? I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0. Welcome to Casual Friday. This week it's going to be it's a pretty short, pretty simple Casual Friday. I'm just going to do Q&A again, just like I did last week. I am planning on having some packs of Invasion Vengeance to open next week, but for now, I don't really think there's a product that I feel like opening or reviewing right now. I might get a deck box in the future to try and test and review, but we will see. In the meantime, I would like to get to your Q&A. And then next week, I will do a little bit more. We begin with Will McDonald, who asks, what do you think of heroes this format? I think heroes are good. I think Dark Law is good, and I think Tree Toad is good, and they can make both of those, and that's pretty good. Do I think they are the top deck of the format? Absolutely not. I mean, it's fairly difficult to compete with ABC for that distinction, but I do think that they are a contender for rogue decks on the tier of things like Water, on the tier of things like Paleozoic, which I suppose is also water. It's one of those decks that we are going to see represented at the top tables, but I don't foresee it taking a place as one of the top tier decks. The reason is because I don't think it has the grind game of BA, or the power of Blue Eyes, or the all-around diverse fuckery of ABC. It's got some good strategies, and I really love decks that use power spells like heroes do, but I don't think that it is going to be that contender. Ajimison3 asks, do you think Konami's current product release schedule, Yu-Gi-Oh! Could eventually become a game with a rotation more than one supported format, like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering? I think that, and he lays out he or she, they lay out a reasonable argument why that may be the case, but I would say my reasoning for saying that there is unlikely to be a set rotation format with multiple alternative formats is that, first of all, Konami has tried a lot of alternative formats for their events, and they cannot get their alternative formats to take off. Sealed YCSs are universally hated. The Generation Duels thing is doing fairly well, but it hasn't been, as far as a trial run, it hasn't been wildly successful. I think that Konami isn't going to seriously consider going into set rotation until one of these alternative formats, especially if it's Generation Duels, takes off. So that's my first reasoning. The second reason is that people have been saying that we're getting to the point in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we could support a set rotation for the last 10 years or so. I think it's been, like, as long as I have been back in the game. I got back in around 2008 and 2009, and even then, people were saying that we are getting to the point, quote unquote, where Konami had some incentive to start a set rotation format. And I just, like, the fact that it hasn't happened yet kind of tells me that it is unlikely to happen. The Divergency asks, is there a banned card that would make the game more fun if it came off the list? The Dragon Rulers! The Dragon Rulers. All the Dragon Rulers. I want to see them off the list. I miss Dragon Rulers. They're so much fun, and they're such good cards, and they work with so many different strategies, and they create such cool strategies of their own. If they could just ban Dark Matter Dragon, that would be A-okay. Let's bring back the Dragon Rulers. I absolutely want to see a format where we can have the Dragon Rulers at 2 each, especially if we get Adalon. Can you imagine how much fun Adalon would be if you had Dragon Rulers, since the Adalon Summoner allows you with the spell card to banish cards from your graveyard as cost for the fusion? That would be so much fun! Dragon Rulers would be so cool! I miss Dragon Rulers a lot. I know y'all hate it. I know most people hate Dragon Rulers. I know most people hated the Dragon Ruler formats. I enjoyed them. I love Dragon Rulers. I want them back. Ben SX specifies the new Ancient Gear support from the Structure deck and asks, will it be anything more than a casual deck for locals? I think that I can see it becoming more of a thing, depending on the available generic support at the time that it comes out in the TCG. I can see that if there was generic support that could really support this beat sticks power spells type of strategy that the Ancient Gear deck has. Some of the cards are absolutely spectacular. I was rereading them today for this video, and like Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon is amazing because it can attack and then your opponent cannot do anything until the end of the damage step, which is awesome in against basically every deck this format. And then once you have completed a battle, at the end of the damage step, it can destroy a spell or trap card in the field. And so that's really powerful. It can destroy monsters and spells by battle in one blow. That is an awesome card, and I could see that working with Catapult and Gear Town and things. It's just like, It's an incredible card. I think that that card alone might be able to make the engine at least viable in some capacity or another. Unfortunately, it is a level 9, and so it is not compatible with trains, but you know, a guy can only hope. There's also Wyvern, which is a really cool card that I can see actually potentially being just kind of a side deck card. Its effect is if it's normal summoned or a special summoned, you can add one Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand, except Ancient Gear Wyvern. And you also cannot set cards for the rest of this turn, which means that you couldn't set something over a Gear Town, for instance. However, when it attacks, your opponent can't activate monster effects until the end of the turn or until the end of the damage step, which is really powerful against decks that rely on floaters, for instance, BA. So if you combine that with the Catapult, with Gear Town, with Ancient Gear Fortress, you can have some really cool things. So I think that if you can find either a good deck that this can act as an engine in, or a good supporting engine to work with it, or if the format has the generic cards to support it, I think that these Ancient Gear cards can actually be very powerful. The Garunix King asks, have you seen the Adalon monsters in the main deck cards, and do you have any ideas of what to play them in? The fusions are all over the place with their uses and requirements, so it seems like they might be relegated to a support archetype. I think that that is highly likely. I think that we're going to be seeing the Adalon cards being used as an engine in other decks, and the reason is because we don't really have an engine at the moment that can work with multiple attributes, and you want to have consistency with these things. Given that the spell card, the fusion spell, allows you to fusion summon using monsters from your opponent's graveyard, you might think that it would be a deck that would be good basically against every deck because you can remove cards from your opponent's graveyard to get monsters. However, their fusion monsters are not consistent in how good they are. Some are much better than others, some are actually fairly terrible. And so you can't really rely on another deck to provide the things that you want. And so I think that we are going to be seeing Adalon monsters and the Adalon Summoner and the Fusion card in a couple of engines that can either gain support off of the fusions, or that can put light monsters in the graveyard to get you, is it Aliester or is it Elysian? The really big, Elysian is the really big one, which I think is super cool. I think that card is amazing, and if we can see enough good support for the Adalon cards, I think that that card is going to provide a huge benefit to whoever can play it. But Aliester, I believe, is the one that is the light one, that is Ultimate Providence. It's like a walking Ultimate Providence. If a deck can run light plus the Adalon engine, so to speak, that is going to be a really powerful asset to have around. David Lombardi asks, do you think at any point you would recreate the series on how to find the right deck type? I think that I am occasionally going to redirect people back toward that series and potentially the video on Underworld 6667's channel. However, I don't think that I'm going to remake that series again, just because I think that I've actually made and remade it a few different times now, and I think that eventually people are going to get bored with my remaking that series. I may start coming out with once per format, kind of my projection of what types of decks each part of the meta is going to become. If people are interested in that, I would definitely do that, but I don't think that I want to recreate the series over again. Ghostrick Knight asks, alright, to continue with the Mermail theme, are you going to be playing frogs in the main of Mermail post Invasion of Vengeance? And how good do you think Tree Toad will be? I think that I have the frogs now, and I am going to be testing it with Mermails. I think that the frogs are amazing, and they have the ability to do well with Mermails. I think that if we had Tidal in the format, it would be so much better, but we do not. And so I think that I will try running frogs. I suspect that it is going to reduce the consistency of the deck, but it is also going to improve the turn 1 of the deck, and it's also going to improve the power of the deck. And so I think it's going to be a little bit of a trade-off. And finally, One Fire Up has decided to wade into the world of politics and ask me a political question. He asks, what do you think of the term alt-right? Specifically, do you think its current usage is incorrect? I think that the alt-right as a movement, as a community, as a whatever they decide to refer to themselves as, are very true to the term, because they are in terms of political theory, they are a very right-wing group of people. They do participate in kind of the right-wing the purpose of politics. And there is a difference in kind of the purpose of politics and the mindset between more right wing groups and more left wing groups. Right wing groups, it tends to be that they are focused on protecting the unification of a group of people. More right wing thought processes and more right wing strategies tend to be focused on preserving a way of life that is associated with certain demographics, certain backgrounds, and things like that. And so when we're talking about the alt right, they do very much prescribe to that. They do talk a lot about profiling. They talk a lot about kind of indoctrinating into this particular version of their idea of the American way of life. And so I think that is a very right-wing term. So the right side of alt-right, of the word alt-right, I think is very apt. And the alt part makes sense because they are very different from the modern Republican Party, who tries to take a number of fairly moderate stances having to do with immigration and with foreign policy that the alt-right tends to consider too weak, I would say. So yeah, that's what I think of the phrase alt-right. I don't think the current usage is incorrect. I have my own issues with the alt-right ideology from an economic perspective. A lot of their strategies put a damper on economics, I think economic growth is an improvement to human rights and quality of life, and so I take issue with a lot of their policy in that respect. And I also just think that it is an ideology that seems to be based in fear of the unknown. And so I significantly disagree with them on that. But, yes, the term alt-right, I think, is an apt term for the group of people, and I do not think that it has been misused. Anyway, so that is what I have for you. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. Of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Thank you all for watching. I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0. I will see you this weekend in Last Week in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I got a jet. See y'all.